Go ahead and get started. I think there's going to be a number of others who join us as we go. Um, so I'm Sam Taylor. I'm the Faith and Community Partnerships Coordinator here at Interfaith Works. And for this community conversation this month, we are focusing on rental assistance and eviction prevention. I'm going to introduce our speakers and then hand it over to them. We have Matt Losak, Executive Director of Montgomery County Renters Alliance. Kelly Olin, the Program Manager for Montgomery County Office of Home Energy Program. Charlotte Taylor, Supervisor Social Worker for the Services to End and Prevent Homelessness. And Captain Juan Portillo, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. We're going to go in order of speakers as they appear on this flyer. So I am going to hand it right off to Matt. And if you could just please introduce the speaker after you. We have about 8 minutes per speaker. That'll put us right at about 7:30, and then we have 30 minutes for questions and conversation.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sam. And thanks to Interfaith Works for engaging this important conversation for so many. As many people know, well, first I should probably introduce the Renters Alliance. We are the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. I chaired the tenants work group from 2008 to 2010, and we put out a report to the county council and the county executive with 50 recommendations. And one of those recommendations was the formation of an independent nonprofit to do what we do. So that's how we came about. And we were formed in 2010 and have been out in apartment communities ever since, working on public policy, working with renters individually and collectively, forming tenants associations, advocating for government and legislative improvements that support renters in the county as well as in the state. And we work with scores of other organizations and civic groups and active tenants and tenants associations around the county and around the state to get that done. And of course, I'm very pleased to report, as many of you probably are aware, that we finally passed a rent stabilization program that was signed into law on Monday by County Executive Mark Elrich. But let me also quickly add that rent stabilization program was a long way from everything we wanted. There's still a whole lot more to do. Not everybody's going to be covered by it. And there's several months of regulation development that is still ongoing. And we are watching that closely to see what the legislation will actually do for renters and what it won't do for renters. And we had a town hall last night with the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs Office Manager, Nicole Catravanos, which is on YouTube now, if you want to watch it and hear her walk us through the legislation and address some of the questions and concerns which are going to be ongoing for a while. I am sure some of you have heard many people think that they're protected now, that they're not going to see their rents go up. And unfortunately, that's just not exactly true right now, even though I can say proudly and happily that this is progress, real solid progress against a backdrop that was really against this kind of thing for many, many years. So we have to sort of take stock of the progress that we've made and still know that there's much more work to do. So with all of that, what we are still seeing is the forced migration of working and low-income families from Montgomery County and beyond, because they are being priced out of their homes, either because they were impacted by COVID, because the economy has left them behind in some way, they've never caught up. And we are seeing a whole bunch of people who are also on the margins, where it didn't take much to destabilize them. And if they saw a 5%, 6%, 7% rent increase, much less a double-digit rent increase, their housing rug was pulled out from under them. And also we are seeing this a lot with seniors and those on fixed incomes. So there's really a major housing destabilization current underway. I'm sure Officer Portillo can speak to the numbers that he sends us once a month, but the spikes in the writ list are obvious. That is, those people who have had judgments against them in court and have now had their landlords file a writ of restitution to take the property back. Those statistics are the tip of the iceberg, but we are seeing a hockey stick of them growing and growing since the COVID rent relief program has ended, since the courts have opened and are working at full bore. So the Renters Alliance, what can we do now? Obviously, our colleagues at Services to End and Prevent Homelessness can talk about emergency services currently available, but the Renters Alliance role sees we have two roles right now. One is to provide information door to door to people who are on the writ of restitution list. Thanks to the sheriff's office, which is providing us that information, we're able to go to people who we find on the list, provide them with information about what services we can offer, what the county offers, and try to marry them together so that some of the difficulty can be lessened, and the impact of possibly being evicted could either be avoided or at least diminished in some way. But most importantly for the Renters Alliance, what we are doing is trying to reach people early, often in apartment communities where they live, so that we go and invite them to town halls like this one, where we can talk about what their rights are. We can address issues and connect them to the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs for enforcement, or to the Code Enforcement Department, or we can hook them up with Health and Human Services to see if there's a program or resource that they can avail themselves of there. And now we also have the right access to counsel program, which is managed by the state, the Maryland Legal Services Corporation, that has funded with the support of the Maryland legislature, the right of lower income folks to have a lawyer when they go to court in order to balance the terms of the engagement. So many of us, I mean, it takes me 2 aspirin and a glass of scotch to call the cable company. When you go to court, it is an overwhelming and very threatening and intimidating experience. I just had to defend a ticket the other day, and I have a graduate degree, and it still riles you a little bit. I was successful, but I had to have my act together. If you're not used to these institutions and you don't know how it works, or you're busy, you have 2 jobs, you have to take off a day from work, this can be very overwhelming. And so having an attorney, and especially if you have a case and you don't understand what your case might be, having an attorney could really save your home. And so we can sometimes connect now tenants to legal services. And for those who have the funds, we can also connect them to private attorneys, low bono and pro bono and paid attorneys who also can represent them. All of this in an effort to empower renters to know their rights and responsibilities, to be able to plan well in advance. There are some people, despite the rent stabilization bill, despite code enforcement, who are going to lose their homes. And those people need to be thinking about what to do, not just in weeks, but months in advance. And so reaching them early, counseling them, and considering their options, which may not be pleasant options, but they are far better options than going through the courts, getting an eviction, a judgment against them, and going into eviction, where ultimately, sadly, one could actually see their belongings put on the street. So that's what we do, and we do it 7 days a week.
Thank you, Matt. We're going to move right along. Kelly is our next speaker. Kelly, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Oland. I'm the program manager for the Office of Home Energy Programs. So where, most of the conversation here is about rent stabilizing housing, preventing eviction. We're kind of on the other end of that and helping low-income residents of the county to maintain their home heating and their electric service. So we provide assistance to low-income residents in Montgomery County. We are a state program. We administer strictly for Montgomery County on our end. We provide assistance with home heating costs, whatever that may be. It could be, gas, electric, could be wood, propane, kerosene. There's still a lot of fossil fuel families out there, and that's gotten incredibly expensive and very challenging for them to heat their homes in the winter and keep their homes at a comfortable level. We can also provide some assistance with past due natural gas bills. We can help with up to $2,000 for households if they're behind in their gas bill to help get them caught up. We provide assistance with electric, and for all of these, they may pay directly to a utility. They may pay directly to their landlord. They may have a third-party company where a lot of the complexes, instead of getting separate meters, they may split the cost of the utilities throughout the entire complex and everyone pays a portion into it. We can help in all those situations. We also, like I said, provide assistance with electric costs, and we can also assist with up to $2,000 towards electric utility past due balances. So where our basic grants for heating and the electric are eligible for a customer to receive once a year, a program year we run July 1st to June 30th. The actual assistance with their past due arrears, they can receive once every 5 years. And there is some flexibility in that. There are certain waiver situations where somebody can receive it more often. We currently also, through the end of September, have a water assistance program where we can assist residents of the county who pay directly to WSSC, City of Rockville, or Town of Poolsville with their past due water balance. And that's also up to $2,000. That is a one-time benefit, as the program, as it lives right now, is temporary as part of some COVID funding the state of Maryland received. There are a few pushes through legislation. They're trying to get something more ongoing with that, but it hasn't quite been picked up and pushed forward yet. So we're not sure as of the end of September if there will be something additional, if that will honestly be all of it. So we are part of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness. We work very closely with our housing stabilization unit. As you know, a lot of people, if they are in a situation where they're behind in their rent, that generally is not the only place that they are behind. And so that's kind of where we pick up to try to help, and even sometimes to coordinate, because maybe they can get the assistance with the rent with housing stabilization, and possibly we can assist them with getting their utilities current. Now, the one thing that is different with our program is they don't have to be behind to apply for assistance, and the household does not have to be behind to receive assistance. So outside of the past due balance benefits that we can provide, a customer can receive benefits to their heat and electric no matter what they owe. They can have a credit to their account and they can still qualify for the assistance to help them in an ongoing situation. Trying to think if I'm missing anything. There's multiple ways they can reach out to us. They can email us and I can send all that information. Customers can apply. They can apply our program at the same time they might be applying or renewing for their SNAP benefits or any of those services through the OESS program. It's all combined into one application online, so they can do that once, upload all their documents that way, and the application gets distributed out to the appropriate program. So that's a really nice way for them to be able to kind of see what's out there, what's available, and then apply that way. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charlotte, but they can also apply for an EFC assistance for certain.
That's the thing. You're correct. They can apply through MD Think, the portal. That's right.
Okay. So that's pretty much what we do. We serve, as of right now, or we see around 11 to 12,000 applications a year. We know the need is much greater than that, and we know that there's a lot more households out there that could potentially qualify, that we could be able to help. We're always looking for ways to get the word out, to try to, especially to the populations that maybe aren't being served or aren't aware of what's available and out there for them. We do some advertising. The state does some advertising. We go out to events. We do whatever we can to try to get the word out to bring more people in. I will say the one nice thing with this year is they did increase the income limits. So even though it is a low income program, they did increase the income limits to 200% of the federal poverty level. So we've always been 175. So that does open the door for another group of residents that could potentially get assistance with us. The water program, however, is 60% of area median income. So that is a very moderate income limit. So a lot of households that may not be able to receive the heat or electric assistance could potentially still qualify for the water assistance. And that's pretty much what we do. And we have one office. We're located at 1301 Picard Drive. And we are open to the public 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. So customers can come in if they have questions. If they don't want to talk to someone on the phone or through email, they can always come in person as well. And if we're good, I will introduce Charlotte Taylor.
Hi, everyone. As Kelly said, my name is Charlotte Taylor. I am a social worker for the Housing Stabilization Office. I've been a social worker with Montgomery County for over 35 years, so I've been around for quite a long time. Hi, Agnes, good to see you. We have Housing Stabilization Services is where we administer the emergency services funds. So we have 3 offices, the office in Germantown, which I'm the supervisor of. We have one office in Rockville at 1301 Picard on the 2nd floor. Then we also have an office in Silver Spring at 8818 Georgia Avenue. One of the good things that has come out of COVID is that clients really can apply for services from any of our offices. They don't have to go into Silver Spring because they live in Silver Spring. They can be working in Germantown and come into our office in Germantown. We have staff that are working in the office daily and also staff that are working from home. So clients can apply for our services by walking in, or they can contact 311 and they can apply that way. And also they can apply via the MD Think portal for the state grant assistance. The services we provide include, generally what we're trying to do is make sure everyone in the county has stable housing. That is our goal, to assist with making sure people are not being evicted, to help people to develop plans if they don't have an alternative to continue where they're living. We work with homeless families and singles to help them to develop plans so they don't enter into the shelter. We've had a lot of success with what we call our diversion program for homeless families. In the past, folks would come to us and say they need to go to shelter because they don't have an alternative. They can't stay with family members. And now we've started talking to clients and providing support to people to stay with family or friends. We provide financial assistance to help someone if they haven't been able to access any of our benefit programs. We can provide a diversion grant so someone can either stay with their mom, their grandmom, a church friend, to stay with someone to keep themselves in the community. Our goal is for people not to enter into shelter. We really don't think that's the best place for families and children. So we do, and single adults as well, we do everything we can to keep people out of shelter. But if after we've explored everything and a person has stayed in the community and there really is not a good fit, they can't continue where they are, then we do contact the homeless services manager to make some plans for a person to go into shelter, but shelter is our last alternative. The emergency services that we provide assist clients with evictions, clients that have judgments and that have threats, obviously, of being evicted because they've gotten a court judgment. We assist those clients with emergency assistance. We also assist people that have threat of foreclosure. We assist with utility disconnections. And like Kelly said, we partner with OHAP. We make sure people have exhausted the OHAP benefit before we provide grant assistance from the county or the state. In the housing stabilization service area, we utilize funds from 2 sources: the county grant, which is the emergency services grant. We can provide up to $3,000. The state grant is for people that have children under 21 in the home, or it's a pregnant mom or there could be a couple and one of the people or one of the married persons are under 21. We can assist those people with an additional grant from the state for $1,500. What we found that since COVID, we've seen a lot of families that have been applying for assistance that really owe amounts larger than the grant amounts that we have. We have people that may have a judgment for $2,000 to $3,000, but that's a judgment for rent owed just maybe through March. And they still may owe April, May, June, and July's rent. So they still may have like, $12,000 of rent owed. Our goal in many cases is to help a person to stabilize themselves, to deal with that immediate judgment that they're facing. A lot of times people really don't have a place to go and they need time to really plan what they're going to do. So if we have someone, let's say we have someone that's facing an eviction, they owe maybe $3,000 to a landlord. They have other court actions that are coming up. We try to work with the client to make sure they understand their entire situation, that, you have a judgment now. We want to help you to stabilize. If you want to stay here, we can use these funds to help you to stay here. But understand that there are other court actions that your landlord is filing, and eventually you probably will have to move unless you're able to come up with a large amount of money, which could be about $12,000 in some cases. So we try to help people to kind of problem solve and think what is the best way to utilize the county and the state funds. But as everyone knows, we did have, or we still do have, really COVID funds that we have some monies that we're trying to spend the last round of COVID funds, the state and the treasury dollars. So now we're looking forward to August 1st, we're going to have an ability to provide more than the county funds, the $3,000 county funds and the state funds of $1,500 for those families that had a COVID impact. So we'll be rolling that program out on August 1st. So hopefully families that owe large sums of monies, that have over $3,000 really of rent debt, will be able to find some support for them. But they have to be under 30% AMI to get those additional COVID funds. And clients will apply the same way they apply for emergency assistance. That's the way we'll be collecting people, or we'll be processing applications for those customers. Let me see what else to add. I think that was generally, we also, we of course partner with community programs to help families to get additional monies if they need additional monies. We partner with Interfaith Works, we partner with the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, with UMAN. We partner with a lot of programs to get monies to help clients to come up with a package to pay their rent. And we also have staff that work for the housing stabilization service area that are located in the HOC office. And so they partner with us and utilize our funds to assist HOC clients with stabilizing their housing. So I think that was basically all I wanted to say. Thank you, guys. And I just want to introduce Captain Juan Portillo.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Captain Juan Portillo. I oversee the eviction section. At this point, I'm the commander of the division. Our role, of course, is a little bit different, or a lot different than most of you folks are. We are tasked with not only receiving, but also scheduling and overseeing the actual evictions taking place. Mr. Los, I can tell you that we provide the numbers on a monthly basis. That's in the last couple, 3, 4, 5 months or so, it's been really a roller coaster ride with how the evictions are going, and even the risk of a possession or even restitution. So again, our role is completely different. We unfortunately don't have the services to offer that all of you folks do have. However, we do, once we schedule an eviction, we do post the properties advising the tenants that the eviction could be imminent. On that courtesy posting that we put for them, or we post for them, we put information 301 where they can start the process in order to seek the funds that you folks may be able to provide for them. And as Mrs. Taylor was saying earlier, one of the problems that we run into is that although we may have an active writ there are 3 or 4 coming down the line, and these landlords are on a monthly basis that they keep reapplying and reapplying and reapplying. So although the tenant may be safe for 1 month, the next month it may be a different story. So that's important to know that information or have me share that information with you. Really, that's all I have. I guess from my perspective, it's easier if I just take questions. Thank you, Samuel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Captain Portillo, and thank you to all of our speakers. We have about half an hour left, so I'm going to open the floor up to questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand on Zoom. I believe there's an emoji you can hit, or put your questions in the chat that I can read for you. So any questions to start us off? Carol, I think I saw your hand first.
This has been very helpful to me. I'm a member of Jews for Justice, and I also have connection with a wider circle. One of my friends is on the board, and she knows I've been working with the Alliance to help with the new legislation. And this is so impressive what you all do. And I had a couple of thoughts. One is with Mr. Portillo, how long is there, like when the office, wherever you receive a request for eviction from a landlord, how long does that usually take? You may have even said it, but I was having some technical issues, so I was distracted.
No, I didn't say it. So with so that everybody knows, in the last 4 or 5 months, the district court doubled their court dockets, right? They went from 5,000 to 1,000 or so. And that doesn't include Silver Spring. So we're looking at about 1,800 potential cases on a monthly or weekly basis. Because of that influx, because of so many evictions being scheduled, we are actually backed up about 10 weeks at this point. So we are starting to schedule in early October at this point. So there is, fortunately, that kind of builds in some time for the folks who seek resources, unintended, but helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I did want to get a little more information from the person who spoke about the utilities. Is she still here?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Could you repeat your name and contact information? I'd like to stay in touch with you and refer people to you.
Absolutely. I actually have the chat as well. So my name is Kelly Oland, O-L-A-N-D. My email is kelly.oland@montgomerycountymd.gov. And we have a unit email that is checked throughout the day. That is OHEP, O-H-E-P @montgomerycountymd.gov. My number is 240-777-4029. And then we have a main line that is 240-777-4450.
And what's the address again if people want to drop in?
We're at 1301 Picard Drive in Rockville, and we're on the 4th floor.
So you're in the same building as the home eviction.
We are. Yeah, they're on the 2nd, we're on the 4th. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
A lot of funding, good funding for this. Obviously never enough, but.
Yeah, but we've been lucky the last couple of years. There's been a lot of extra funding to help with COVID funding. So that's been very helpful as we've kind of come out of this situation to help people get caught up a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention also that we have staff at the courthouse as well that will forward those referrals directly to us for clients that have gotten judgments in court. So we have staff there funneling those applications directly to Housing Stabilization Emergency Services.
That's great.
Sam, I'd like to piggyback. My name is Frank White. I'm the board chair for Interfaith Works, and I'd like to piggyback off of the funding question. And this probably goes to perhaps the first 3 speakers. But with regard to funding sources, your current funding sources, It seems like since COVID, there may be additional funding for the moment, but how do you foresee that with that funding playing out as county, state, and federal budgets continue to tighten up a little bit?
I'll jump in first. So, yeah, I don't know. We have two different kind of funding streams. Of course, this all goes to the state level. The state disseminates down to the counties. So all of our benefit funding is coming through the state of Maryland. Our heating assistance programs are funded through LIHEAP funds, which is federal funding that's distributed through every state within the country. We don't have a lot of control. We can only hope. So even before COVID hit, they were keeping us at least at pretty level funding, which does help. One of the things that could impact, of course, as wonderful it is that the income guidelines have increased, we can help more families. Of course, that also has to be factored into the benefits that we're able to provide. Our electric assistance program, it's funded through state funding. It's funded through RGGI funding, which is the funding that comes in for greenhouse gas emission auctions. And it's also funded by all of us as ratepayers who pay utility bills. If you look at your utility bill, there's an electric universal service charge, and that's funding that goes into this program. The residential customers pay a small portion, commercial customers pay a much larger portion of that tax into the program. So there's always a concern. There's always a concern that, if we can help more people, of course, we can probably help them with less. Now, I will say that our assistance that we can provide with past due bills, generally, we're still able to at least provide that assistance at the same level. So far, we haven't run into any issues with them. Now, saying to that as well, I know that you were just starting our new program here. We just started it July 1st, but we have been told that because for our purposes, except for water assistance, the COVID funding has pretty much exhausted. So we are going to see some reductions in those bills, or in those benefits, but they're trying to keep them as robust as they can to really help families. I will say because like I said, we're just starting to see what's going out the door. They've made more of a push to keep the heating benefits higher so that at a very minimum, we can hopefully allow people and keep people with heat in their home during the winter months, especially with those that heat with fossil fuel, those that heat with natural gas. Those benefits have stayed pretty on target from what we were seeing pre-COVID that I've seen so far, but I have definitely seen some reductions to the electric side of those benefits. And unfortunately, we're seeing some pretty astronomical bills. It's wonderful there to have the partnership with housing stabilization that can go both ways. Maybe, if they need some extra funding, we can work with them, try to get something together, especially in the households that are already turned off. And as you know, in this extreme heat, that's very dangerous for families to have no electricity, to have no air conditioning in their home.
Absolutely.
But I'm hoping that we'll be able to kind of stay on target to where we are. But unfortunately, time will tell. Every year for our purposes, we just don't know, what may be decided at the federal level to come down, and or even the administrations that we have in office play a big role in the funding that we get through the RGGI funds as well. Because depending on how those auctions are held and how much is actually garnered with them plays a big role in things too.
Got it. Thank you. Charlotte?
And for us, our funding comes from the county. We increased our grants during COVID. Our county grant, the maximum used to be $1,750, but it's been increased to $3,000. And the state grant, the funds that we get from the state, that grant is $1,500. The state grant has really consistently been the same grant for a long time. We get that funding consistently from the state, so I don't anticipate any change with that. However, the county grant, because we've increased the amount of that grant that we're providing. I'm not sure really, frankly, what that will look like in the next fiscal year, but I'm anticipating that that grant will be the same, the $3,000. We have the additional funding from Treasury and from the state for COVID rent relief. So we have some funding left from round 4. So like I said, we're spending that money down. And of course, that money likely will not, we won't get that additional money back from COVID rent relief. But we anticipate our regular funding will be the county funding and the state funding of up to $4,500 for families with children under 21, dependents under 21.
And what I can tell you, Frank, the Renters Alliance doesn't provide financial assistance to tenants. We provide services directly to tenants to help them adjudicate disputes with their landlords, to direct them to services, to understand their rights, and to form tenants associations. So we do direct door-to-door outreach in apartment communities across Montgomery County, and we are funded by the county and private sources to do that. I can say that when we started this, we had some seed money from County Executive Ike Leggett of about $40,000. And we managed to squeeze $1 out of a nickel. And we built the organization into a much larger, robust organization. But considering that nearly 40% of Montgomery County now lives in rental housing, that's up from about 23% when we got this started in 2007, that the dollar per head is still a fraction of what is needed to provide that kind of support for a growing population of residents who are not living in rental housing as a temporary station on the way to owning, but are living in rental housing increasingly as a permanent way of life. And so we are going to have to start thinking about how to holistically address policy and government in order to create stable, prosperous, healthy communities.
Thank you.
Sam, can I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Absolutely. Agnes.
So I volunteer in Council President Evan Glass's office, and he gets a lot of questions from tenants who don't know what their rights are. So they are told by their landlord that their lease will not be renewed and they got to get out, and they have no idea what they can do. So they call Jamie Raskin's office, they call Evan Glass's office, and it's a very panicky situation because they just don't know what their rights are. So is there anybody, I mean, I know the Renters Alliance is wonderful about helping people, but is there any way to make the information more available to the renters? What their rights are, so that when the landlord says, okay, you got to get out of here, they all of a sudden start packing up, but then they got nowhere to go because they can't afford another apartment.
Well, that is our challenge, Agnes, as you know. That's why we were formed. Unfortunately, the council did not want us to be formed in the first place. The Department of Housing did not want us to have a tenants work group in the first place. And we sort of began this whole process the way Oliver Twist began asking for another bowl of gruel and was told, how dare you ask for that? This county was not used to having an organized renter voice. The main voices in politics and public affairs were the main bishops of our economy, which the landlord developer industry, to their credit, has always been that voice. And we've come along, but not coming along as a gorilla, but coming along as a mouse. And so we have developed into a credible voice, but we are still up against a multi-billion-dollar industry that covers the narrative. And so, as I pointed out a few minutes ago, we are scratching the surface on our ability to penetrate the nearly 40%, hundreds of thousands of renters who live in Montgomery County, many born here, but many coming from outside the county who have expectations that they have rights that they don't have, believing that certain rights that you might have in New York City or Washington, D.C. Translate over into other parts of the country, and they do not. Maryland is well behind in its legal infrastructure that protects renters. And that's why I say with this rent stabilization bill, anybody who comes from New York or DC goes, hey, it's a weak bill. There's much more that could have been done. Anybody who lives here goes, you don't know how far we've come. So it's definitely a challenge. Obviously, we work with Evan's office wherever we can, and all of the council members to receive recommendations of tenants who need assistance and needed to be guided to resources. But there are still some major legal problems that go on in the state. One of them is the absence of just cause eviction protection. With 60 days notice at the end of a lease, a landlord could say they're not renewing, not have to state any reason whatsoever. And there is little or no defense against tenant holding over, that is staying one more day past your lease. The only thing that the judge will ask is whether you got your 60-day notice or not. You may be discriminated against. You may be forming a tenants association. You may be complaining about the rats in the basement. You may be complaining about issues of not receiving promised or required services. But because the landlord does not have to state their motivation for not renewing the lease, they can kick you out. And that has a chilling effect on whole communities. And by the way, we work across the county. We don't always work with lower income folks. We also work with higher income renters, especially seniors, over there in Chevy Chase and other places. And many of them are retired doctors and diplomats and judges. And they whisper to us now in their 80s and 90s, we're not going to say a word because we don't know where we're going to go if we don't get our lease renewed. And if they're intimidated, you can only imagine what it's like for middle and low income families and immigrant families when they know that they could lose their home simply by being given 60 days notice. So we've been working on getting just cause eviction law passed. That's our next target, but it is a state law that has to be changed in order for it to happen in Montgomery County.
I just want to add to Agnes, of course, you can refer clients to Department of Housing and Community Affairs, their landlord-tenant handbook. It does describe the eviction process because we do have landlords that try to get people to move before they have the right or the authority to make people move. They make people think that, since your lease is up, you have to go today. And they really cannot be evicted that way. They would have to go to court. So there's a whole process that clients should be sure they're aware of as it relates to the eviction program and process. And I also wanted to mention for the sheriff's office that you guys have been very instrumental in helping us to work with difficult landlords who really want to supersede the eviction process or threaten people with the eviction process to make people move that have funds. We've had a lot of clients that have checks for $12,000, $20,000, want to pay the landlord, and the landlord is saying no, they want them out, and they don't have a no right of redemption. So we really appreciate when you guys, partner with us and call the landlord to say the department has the money, you have to take it, we're not going to go forward, they have the money. So we really do appreciate that. That's a powerful thing to push landlords back. I just want to let you know.
No, I thank you. I very much appreciate you saying that. I will pass it along to the guys. And just a quick note from our end, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is the only entity allowed to conduct evictions in Montgomery County. No one else is able to. I hear stories of self-served evictions. Well, guess what? If it's not the sheriff's office under a writ of restitution or writ of possession, it's probably not a good eviction.
Yeah, and I want to thank
Charlotte
for pointing out the resource and the landlord-tenant handbook, which I posted in the chat, and underscore what Captain Portillo just said. We see this all the time. It's called a self-help eviction, but no one can change the locks on the door. No one can diminish any services legally without a court order and a sheriff being present for the eviction. Anything prior to that, even if they think an eviction is going to be imminent, until the court orders it and the sheriff is there, they cannot do anything. If they come into your apartment to move furniture, it's against the law. Call the police and contact us, contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs during a weekday, but that is not allowed.
Correct.
Thank you. I know that Mary has had her hand up for a little bit. Then we go to Kaylee and then Carol.
Yes. Is there a limit to how many months between incidences of homelessness or potential homelessness that need to pass before they can apply again? We have a family that we're helping through our church, and several years ago, she ran into homelessness and had some aid from the county, and now she may be facing it again. Is she allowed to?
Well, for homelessness, a person can have that, obviously a threat of homelessness, and they need shelter or diversion services that can happen frequently within the year. But for our grants, for security deposit and first month's rent or stop in eviction, for the county grant is once a year. So a person
Once
can
a
get that grant once a year. The state grant is every 2 years.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
All right, Kaylee.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Kelly is this is my daughter's computer. My name is Vanessa Pinto. I'm happy to see some of you that already know me. I work with the grassroots community-based organization here, and so we were doing our best trying to collaborate with different organizations, different institutions, and Mr. Losak, you know that really well. But we know that there's so much that we have to do when it comes to, for example, right now, having more of those who are very impacted for this problem of not having information, accessibility to information. That's a huge issue. So I just would like to ask you to collaborate more. Like, can we think about ways of how can we make this information more accessible? For example, right now, there's a rent stabilization bill that is so recent that happened. So can someone help us understand what this means for us, for renters, for homeowners, for landlords? So I think that is a big issue. And the thing of, for example, more people supporting what you, Mr. Losak, and the organization, your organization is doing, is that we don't have more leaders from the community. And I think that's the main thing. We don't have leadership from community. And because we can be a bigger force by having that. But how many of us, how many organizations are really working on community members understanding what is a rent stabilization bill, what is, like, all these basic terms and concepts in order to advocate, I think, consciously. Thank you.
Well, let me just jump in and say that is what we do. There is nothing more than we like better than the actual tenants in an apartment building to know more than we do. And so we are trying to transfer that knowledge wherever we can. But again, I agree with you that we are only scratching the surface, and we need more and more and more people to not need us and to be able to avail themselves of these resources automatically. Again, I'm a bit of I've been here for many decades, but I was a New Yorker once, and I'll tell you what, my neighbors knew more than most lawyers when it came to their housing rights. And that's because in New York, some things are second nature. One one of my earliest childhood memories was going to visit my grandmother in Brooklyn and arriving in the lobby of the apartment building, which was not a fancy building. And the entire community was standing there with the landlord, complaining about the washing machines and demanding that the floors aren't clean enough and the paint and the this and the that, and the other thing. And they just knew how to do it. And there are some communities in Montgomery County, some apartment communities that do that very well. But I agree with you, my friend, Ms. Pinto. We're not doing enough, and there needs to be more penetration and empowerment in these communities.
And I just wanted to add that we also try to educate our customers that come in to see us for eviction assistance, because a lot of people are not aware of the court process, and they think kind of if they pay this one eviction, all the other months of eviction of non-payment of rent are going to go away. So when people come in to see us, we try to make sure that they are aware of which months they're being taken to court for. This is what the notice says. This is, and we look at their ledger, we go through their ledger with them so they can see where they're at in this process for not paying their landlord. We also go through bank statements. So we really try to do a lot of education for people to understand the gravity of their situation, and also we partner with them. It's not us telling them, it's us really trying to educate and make sure people are aware of their situation.
Sure.
We have about 7 minutes left, so we're going to turn over to Carol real quick. Carol, you're muted.
Wasting time. I was prompted to suggest, after the woman who spoke, who works as a volunteer for the council member, I forgot his name. This is what I think we need, a cheat sheet. Now that this regulation has been passed, of course, it's not the end all and be all. But if, as this lady who just said, that she doesn't know and her fellow tenants don't know their rights, we need to get that to go through the council people because they're connected with their communities, each of their districts. They have a responsibility now to make sure that their community is educated. They should be going out, and this could be suggested at another council meeting. We can all be writing letters. The Interfaith Coalition, or the Interfaith Works, is part of that coalition of 27 members. Every one of them, we could be writing to our council and saying, you have got to do education now. And we'll provide you the information. We'll give you a cheat sheet. So that woman who volunteers at the office of that council member has a list of the organizations and the phone numbers and can go quickly through that. That would not be difficult. And that would be very helpful. Of course, some people don't even know their council member's name and number either. But we need more of that proliferation of education and communication. It's sad we don't even have a newspaper anymore in this county, that we used to have, a Gazette, that was terrific in educating the public. And I guess, is there a Hispanic newspaper that can provide articles and maybe a one-sheeter that they can print out in their publication to help the Latino community at least? Or do we go to the churches now and start providing information to them and giving them a cheat sheet with phone numbers? As simple as that. Yeah. I know a very educated couple in my 2 doors down from me. They don't even know that they can call 311 for information on their property tax. They had no idea who to call. It's frightening. It's really, but I can't imagine what it would be like for a poor, uneducated person with a foreign language to have to go through this. But we have a lot of different targets of where we should start to get that information out. And can that material be designated as part of their lease agreement? Is there anything that can be placed in a lease agreement that would be added to what landlords give out that includes the information that they have questions about their lease, they can call a government agency? How does that sound? I'm just
Back in 2016, Carol, we passed the first comprehensive renter protection bill in the county, which was extremely modest. But one of the provisions was the requirement that at the time of leasing, a landlord has to provide the landlord-tenant handbook. That was not something before. So there's that. Let me say something about prior to these many years working in landlord-tenant and renter outreach. My primary skill was in press and communications. I worked in the White House, I worked on Capitol Hill, and I worked for multiple nonprofits. One of the things that the county needs to do is to create more one-stop shopping on particular issues. And so we have resources at Health and Human Services. We have resources at the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We have resources at the Department of Permitting. We have resources in different buckets around the county. But if we had one aperture where you go and tries to funnel you into, intuitive kind of clicking into what you need, that would be helpful. If you just went to DHCA and look for renters information, it's all still all over the place. And so it's, again, we're in the formative phases of turning the county from a house and garden rural community to what it really is today, which is mostly or on the verge of being somewhat urban, with Bethesda and Rockville and Silver Spring being small cities. And again, with nearly 40% renters. So it's a very different community and demographic that requires a very different government legal structure.
I would like to think that also we can suggest some solutions, because we cannot just leave this session right now thinking, oh, that's really sad that people don't have accessibility, people don't have information, education, blah blah. But so here in Long Branch, what we are planning pretty soon is community. It's not us, it's not Vanessa, it's not Cheer. Community is asking, can we have a conversation? Can we all have a collective understanding of this, so we can all understand what's going on, and how can we all contribute and advocate? And so town hall was suggested, listening sessions was suggested. So that is coming here, and I would love to collaborate with whoever would like to Zoom and be part of these conversations that we're going to have. About rent stabilization, about evictions, about one big thing here, the housing conditions that Long Branch with all these, the numbers, statistics. So this is definitely a place where we can see all of this. So yeah, that's my offer.
Just being respectful of everybody's time. It is almost 8. Please take a moment to look in the chat for the contact information for all of our speakers. As this was a robust conversation, thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to all of our guests with all the questions. I encourage you to keep this conversation going beyond just this meeting, as these are really important topics. Just a logistics note, we will be off for the month of August as far as the community conversation. We will be back on in September. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Be well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.